No music yet, just the sound of altitude. The clouds are different here, thicker, lower, like the city beneath them is deliberately hiding itself until the last possible moment. And then, there it is. Not a grid, not the ruler straight geometry of Manhattan. Something else entirely. A sprawl. A living organism that grew in every direction at once, following rivers and coastlines and ancient roads that were old before America existed. 37 million people. The largest metropolitan area on the face of the earth. Welcome to Seat 32A. Tonight, we're landing in Tokyo. And nothing you think you know about this city is quite right. Look down. Really look. Tokyo doesn't look like a city from up here. It looks like a city that ate several other cities and kept growing. Yokohama to the south, Kawasaki in between, Saitama to the north. There are no edges, no borders you can see from the window. Just light, extending to the horizon in every direction, until the light meets the ocean and stops. 37 million people. To put that in perspective, the entire population of California lives down there, in one metropolitan area, served by one train system, eating from the same fish markets, watching the same morning news. This is the city that should not work, and yet it is, by almost every measure, the city that works best. Let's start at the beginning, because Tokyo's beginning is one of the great origin stories in urban history. The year is 1457. A minor feudal lord named Ota Doken builds a small castle on a swampy plain where a few rivers meet the ocean. The location is strategically useful, but hardly impressive. The Japanese name for the area, Edo, simply means estuary, mouth of the river. Not exactly inspiring. For the next century and a half, Edo is a modest provincial town. Nothing suggests what it will become. Then, in 1603, everything changes. A warlord named Tokugawa Ieyasu wins the last of Japan's great civil wars and establishes his government, his shogunate, not in Kyoto, the ancient imperial capital, but in Edo. His reasons are partly strategic. Edo is far from the old power centers, far from the emperor, who still nominally rules but actually has no power, far from the rival clans who might challenge him. What Tokugawa builds in Edo over the next 2.5 centuries is one of the most remarkable experiments in urban planning in human history. He forces Japan's feudal lords, the daimyo, to spend alternating years in Edo. When they're in the city, they bring their entire households. Thousands of samurai, servants, craftsmen, merchants following in their wake. The city grows not organically, but by mandate, by political engineering. By 1700, Edo has a population of over 1 million people. London, at the same time, has around 600,000. Tokyo was the largest city in the world 300 years ago. Most people don't know that. Look out the window at those lights again. There's a pattern there if you know what to look for. The bright corridors, those are the train lines. Tokyo's rail network is so dense, so precise, so comprehensively planned that the city essentially grew along its tracks. Where a new station opened, a new neighborhood formed. The train lines are the skeleton. Everything else is flesh built around them. 30 train operators. Over 900 stations in the greater metropolitan area. The Yamanote line, that oval loop you'll sometimes see on maps, circles central Tokyo like a spine. Every major neighborhood hangs off it like a bead on a string. Shinjuku, Shibuya, Harajuku, Akihabara, Ueno, each one its own complete world. The average delay on Tokyo's train network is 47 seconds per year. Not per day, per year. When a Tokyo train is 1 minute late, the conductor apologizes over the intercom. When a train is 5 minutes late, the railway issues formal written apologies to passengers. When a Shinkansen bullet train was 9 seconds early to a station in 2017, the railway issued a public apology for the error. 9 seconds early. They apologized. That tells you something very specific about this culture, about the relationship between individual behavior and collective expectation, about what it means to make a promise in Japan and what it means to break one. Now let's talk about the thing that shaped modern Tokyo more than anything else. September 1st, 1923. The Great Kanto Earthquake. Magnitude 7.9. The earthquake itself is devastating, but it's the fires that destroy Tokyo. Gas lines rupture. Cooking fires spread in the wooden residential neighborhoods. A firestorm develops that generates its own wind system, creating a fire tornado in one district that kills 38,000 people in 15 minutes. 140,000 dead in total. Half of Tokyo burned to the ground. The city rebuilds. Not on the same footprint, the rebuilding creates the dense, layered, seemingly chaotic urban texture that defines Tokyo today. The wide boulevards that slice through certain neighborhoods, those are fire breaks built after 1923 to prevent the next catastrophe. Then, 22 years later, March 9th, 1945, the United States firebombs Tokyo. 300 B-29s drop incendiary bombs on the most densely populated city on Earth. 100,000 people die in a single night. 16 square miles burn. Tokyo has been destroyed, completely destroyed, twice within living memory. What does that do to a city's psychology? What does it do to a culture's relationship with impermanence? There is a Japanese concept called mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, the beauty of things, precisely because they don't last. Cherry blossoms are the most famous expression of this. The Japanese national obsession with sakura, with the 2-week window each spring when the trees bloom and then shed their petals, is not just aesthetic. It is philosophical. It is a culture that has learned, through devastating repetition, that beautiful things are temporary, and that this makes them more beautiful, not less. Tokyo was destroyed. Tokyo rebuilt. Tokyo was destroyed again. Tokyo rebuilt again. Faster, more modern, more resilient each time. The city you're descending toward right now was, 80 years ago, a field of ash. Look toward the bay, that dark water to the east. Tokyo Bay is where Japan met the modern world. In 1853, an American naval officer named Matthew Perry sailed 4 warships into the bay and essentially told Japan, open your ports to trade or face the consequences. Japan had been deliberately, legally, philosophically isolated from the rest of the world for 250 years. The Tokugawa shogunate had closed the country in 1635. No Japanese could leave. No foreigners could enter. The only trade permitted was a small Dutch outpost on an artificial island in Nagasaki Harbor. Perry's arrival, what the Japanese call the black ships after the dark smoke of the steam engines, ended all of that. Japan was forced to open, and Japan's response to being forced open was one of the most extraordinary national pivots in human history. Instead of resisting modernization, Japan decided to master it faster than anyone thought possible. In 1868, the emperor was restored to power, the shogunate abolished, and Japan launched the Meiji Restoration. a deliberate, government-directed program to modernize every aspect of Japanese society simultaneously. Legal system, military, education, industry, medicine. Japanese students were sent to Europe and America to study. Foreign experts were imported to teach. The national goal was explicit. Japan would learn from the West, and then Japan would surpass the West. Within 50 years, Japan had defeated Russia in a war, the first time an Asian nation had defeated a European power in the modern era. The world was stunned. Tokyo, renamed from Edo in 1869, became the capital of this new, modern, rapidly industrializing Japan. The city grew at a pace that had no precedent, and then it burned, and then it grew again, and then it burned again, and then it grew again, this time into something the world had never seen before. What you're looking at from this window is not just the largest city on Earth. It is the proof of a specific theory about human organization. Tokyo has almost no violent crime. In a city of 37 million people, there are roughly 10 homicides per year. Manhattan, with a population 1/15 the size, has more. Tokyo's streets are clean, not because of heavy enforcement, but because of a cultural norm so deeply embedded it operates below consciousness. Nobody litters, not because of fines, because littering is simply not something you do. It would be embarrassing. It would impose your mess on others. This is the key to understanding Tokyo. The self is always understood in relation to the group. Your behavior is not just your choice. It is your contribution to or subtraction from the collective experience. Being on time is not about your schedule. It is about not making others wait. Keeping your space clean is not about your preferences. It is about not burdening others with your disorder. Westerners sometimes experience Tokyo as uncanny. The politeness can feel excessive. The order can feel oppressive. The silence on the trains, 37 million people moving through a train system and barely speaking above a whisper, can feel eerie. But spend more than a week there and something shifts. You start to feel the gift of it, the gift of living in a city where nobody is performing aggression at you, where the streets work, where the trains come, where the food, even the convenience store food, is prepared with genuine care, where the person serving you considers their work, however small, to be a matter of personal honor. There's a word for this in Japanese, shokunin, roughly translated as craftsman, but the meaning goes deeper. A shokunin is someone who has devoted themselves completely to the mastery of their craft, whether that craft is making sushi or repairing shoes or driving a taxi. The taxi drivers in Tokyo wear white gloves. The seat covers are lace. This is not performance. This is a philosophy of work made visible. The economy. Tokyo's GDP is approximately $2.4 trillion, roughly equal to New York's, larger than France's, larger than the United Kingdom's, as a city. But Tokyo's economy has a history that New York's doesn't share. In the late 1980s, Tokyo was the most expensive city in the world by an almost incomprehensible margin. Japanese asset prices had risen so high that the land under the Imperial Palace, a single piece of real estate in central Tokyo, was theoretically worth more than all the real estate in California combined. Then, in 1991, the bubble burst. What followed was what economists now call the lost decade, actually closer to 2 lost decades of deflation, stagnation, and corporate paralysis. Japan's economy stopped growing. The salarymen, The white-collar corporate workers who had defined Japanese economic success found their lifetime employment guarantees quietly evaporating. Tokyo survived it, adapted. The city that had rebuilt twice from total physical destruction proved it could rebuild economically too. The Tokyo that exists today is not the hyperinflated bubble Tokyo of the 1980s. It is leaner, stranger, more creative. A city that has learned to find value in the spaces between the official economy. The global obsession with Japanese pop culture, anime, manga, video games, streetwear, food culture, is not an accident. It grew partly from the lost decade, from a generation of young Japanese who turned inward and created extraordinary things, because the conventional economic path had narrowed. We're descending now. Watch the window. See how the city reveals itself? Layer by layer as the altitude drops. First, the abstract light grid. Then the train corridors becoming visible. Then individual neighborhoods distinguishable. The neon density of Shinjuku on the west, the older, lower skyline of the east, the bay receding behind us. Tokyo does not have one skyline. It has dozens. Each ward is almost its own city. Shinjuku looks nothing like Yanaka. Shibuya looks nothing like Asakusa. You could spend a year in Tokyo and never visit the same neighborhood twice. There is a neighborhood in Tokyo called Yanaka that survived both the 1923 earthquake and the 1945 firebombing. It is one of the only places in the city where you can walk through streets that look roughly as they did 100 years ago. Old wooden temples, small family shops, narrow alleys. It exists inside the world's largest city like a secret kept from modernity. And just a few kilometers away, in Akihabara, you can walk into a building that sells robot parts, then a floor selling vintage video games, then a floor selling audiophile equipment, then a rooftop with a maid cafe. The technological density of Akihabara, the concentration of electronic innovation in those few city blocks, represents something about Japan that the bullet trains and the clean streets also represent: an almost spiritual relationship with precision, with the perfectly engineered thing. The wheels will touch down in a moment. Narita is actually 60 kilometers from central Tokyo, a fact that surprises many first-time visitors. The city is so vast that its airport had to be built on farmland that farmers refused to sell for decades, creating one of the longest-running land disputes in Japanese history. From Narita, a train will carry you into the city in about an hour. As you ride, the density will slowly increase around you. Fields giving way to suburbs, giving way to the outer wards, giving way to the inner city, until you pull into Tokyo Station and step out into the organized, immaculate, slightly overwhelming reality of 37 million people going about their day with extraordinary efficiency. You will notice you are speaking more quietly than usual. Everyone does, the first time. You will notice the precision, the trains, the cleanliness, the packaging, the extraordinary care with which things in Japan are wrapped and presented, as if every object deserves to be treated as a gift. And then, if you are lucky, somewhere between the first convenience store onigiri you eat standing on the platform and the moment you get lost in a neighborhood whose name you can't pronounce, Tokyo will do what it does to everyone who gives it enough time. It will make you question every assumption you have about how a city can work, about how many people can share a space without destroying it, about what civilization actually looks like when it decides to take itself seriously. This was Siet 32A Tokyo, Japan, Episode 2. 37 million people, one city, 4,000 years of continuous habitation. Destroyed twice, rebuilt twice, still standing. Next time, we go somewhere completely different. Same seat, different window, same question. What is this city, really? Subscribe and find a window seat.